Oi oi, alright, how's it going? I'm Grant, you're you. This is Doodle Review. If you're new here, this is how it works. I'll review music. There's actually not much more to say than that. Really, it's pretty simple. I mostly look at things in the alternative rock category, so if that's your vibe, mate, you just gotta subscribe. Today we're in a bit more of a classic rock sort of world. We're talking about the latest album from Peter Gabriel. Now, Peter Gabriel is a singer-songwriter with a body of work considered by a lot of the legacy rock media to be pretty prestigious. Starting his music career in the mid-60s with a band named Garden Wall, he would eventually break through in the prog rock outfit Genesis. As the frontman of Genesis, he'd become just as known for his outlandish stage costumes as he would the music, and this caused a lot of tension in the band. But in terms of the evolution of popular music as a whole, the blending of performance art with credible, deep and innovative rock music is often cited as being massively influential. Famously, Gabriel would actually leave Genesis in the mid-70s right as they were beginning to gain widespread acclaim and were at the precipice of becoming stars. What happened next was fairly unheard of at the time. Phil Collins, the band's drummer, would reluctantly step up to the plate as a vocalist and songwriter while remaining behind the kit, pushing Genesis into a new phase where they ultimately did become one of the world's biggest bands. Equally unlikely, considering he had been one of the most challenging and avant-garde members of the old Genesis, Peter Gabriel then kicked off a solo career which became just as huge as his old bandmates, spawning hit after hit after hit across the 80s. I grew up in a household with parents who very much loved Peter Gabriel, so no doubt I've heard more stuff of his than I probably realise, and of course I know stuff like Sledgehammer. But this is the first time I've actually sat down and intentionally listened to a Gabriel album from front to back. And I find it really funny because his voice, whenever I hear it, it does remind me of my childhood, and that must at some level be because of the subliminal listening I got courtesy of my parents. But what I actually think of is the Tarzan soundtrack, which isn't even him, it's Phil Collins. I guess it kind of makes sense that their vocals would occupy the same space, given that Collins basically became a vocalist by learning Gabriel's parts, but it's weird that my subconscious mangles them together so vividly. I'm not sure if that would be considered sacrilege by Genesis fans. I don't know. I don't think it's entirely down to the vocal sound though. There is something about the sentimentality weaved throughout Gabriel's voice that evokes this feeling as well, I think. This album, I.O., has had a long gestation period, with the songs that would ultimately make up this album beginning to form as far back as 1995. However, in that almost 30-year period, Gabriel would go on detours and become distracted by various, touring, orchestral and covers albums. Eventually, though, settling down to finalise and re-record the cemented tracklist at the end of 2022, Gabriel was ready to release his 10th album of original material late last year in 2023. Even releasing material is an opportunity to innovate for this artist though, with I.O. being released in 3 different mixes. There's the Bright Side mix, the Dark Side, and then the one I chose to listen to, which is the Inside mix. Sadly, there just aren't enough hours in the day for me to listen to 3 different versions of this hour-long album to try and kind of discern the differences, so I'll have to let you guys tell me in the comments if I've made some sort of huge mistake in my choice or if I'm missing anything from those other mixes. But overall, I can appreciate a fair amount of what is going on here melodically, tonally and compositionally, but there are a few things that keep me at arm's length, things that keep me from really getting on board with the record. In some instances those are lyrical themes, other times it's overproduction, and sometimes it's just, I don't know, I guess it just doesn't really resonate with me and where I'm at in my life now. But let's get to the stuff I do like. Panopticon starts the album off with a song about, like quite a few of the tracks here, I have no idea what the fuck he's on about. Either way, my dude seems into it, which is cool. Whatever it is about, there are several elements to the track that hit deep. It's clear instrumentally that what I've always heard about Gabriel is true. He surrounds himself with incredible players. Tony Levin is a legendary bassist, famous among people that take the instrument seriously for his work on Gabriel tracks like Sledgehammer, for instance, but also because of his work with groups like King Crimson. On this track, and plenty of others here, Levin just is the pocket. He's clearly playing some alien crafted bass guitar with a bunch of strings, because you can hear the jangly, buzzy tone that comes with having 50 odd strings. But that low end is punchy and played in a way that just adds such a unique flavour to the song. Just an aside, but I have decided that this is generally the first sign of aging in a musician. They've decided that they've kind of outgrown what's possible with the universally accepted number of strings and end up somehow like this. Levin with Mano Cache make for an utterly formidable rhythm section, with the latter's feel for space but also a super tight, almost whip-like attack on each part of the kit. On the title track of the album, I.O., you can hear this most prominently with the thunderous explosion of the drums and cymbals propelling us into the infectious chorus, particularly on the second half of the track. Road to Joy gives us probably one of the biggest pop moments of the album, recalling Gabriel's 80s hits. It has that huge Levin bass, of course, but also plucky funk guitar strums, organs, and even synthesized horns that sound so retro it couldn't not have been a choice. And I mean, they have a whole orchestra on the album, so they probably real, which makes it even funnier that they sound like this. It almost sounds completely out of place alongside the rest of the album, but it's too good not to include. Four Kinds of Horses is a dark, brooding and tension-filled track that sees Gabriel really lean into his falsetto, in addition to his trademark vocal style that just naturally seems to invite you to hum or sing along. So there's a lot to enjoy, but this album isn't without its turn-offs, for me anyway. Much like I was sort of mentioning earlier about bass guitars with hundreds of additional strings, there's a kitchen sink approach to the production that, while I respect the kind of hunger for innovation, just feels unnecessary a lot of times. There are so many bleeps, bloops, zings and buzzes, you sometimes feel like you're in a 60s Batman show with how they pop up all over the mix. These aspects are also present alongside what sound like a full, 60-piece orchestra. Again, actually getting all of these things into one song is a feat that commands respect, no doubt, but does it always make the track better? Sometimes. I mean, Four Horses and The Court are definitely examples of songs that bring these disparate worlds together, but then you have tracks like Panopticon, I.O. and Live and Let Live, where it's just overwhelming. I feel like the song would be better served picking a direction, either the electronic or the orchestra. Maybe that's what these additional mixes offer, I'm just now thinking. What's a shame to me is how the shoehorning though of these instruments of various shapes and sizes creates distractions on the more tender moments, like Playing for Time. This is a really nice ballad that to me evokes like Tom Waits or Randy Newman, but is intent on pulling a really intense orchestra into the mix at the end, and I just don't think it needs it. So Much strikes a similar tone but actually manages to keep everything pretty chill instrumentally, and I think it worked better for it. Lyrically, there's just a bunch of stuff here that makes me wince a little bit, with platitudes that make sense in an enlightened, I'm in touch with the world sort of way. But like I said before, if you're just not at that point in your life, it's like spiritually running nails against a chalkboard. I.O. is all like, I'm a part of everything, I've got stuff going in and stuff coming out, and all of a sudden I'm a teenager again, rolling my eyes at some wisdom I'm just not ready to take on board. And I'm kind of now thinking about Peter Gabriel pooping, which I didn't have expectations for on this album. I think that almost sums up my feelings on this record overall, actually. Peter Gabriel has always felt more like an act of my parents' generation compared to other bands and artists from the same era, and while as I've gotten older and matured, that gap has narrowed enough so that I can appreciate everything here on some level, and certain tracks I do genuinely enjoy, there's still that distance where I find a bit of it still quite cringe. My personal rating for my enjoyment, and I know the guy's a legend and the musicianship is off the scale, but to me this I would put as a 5.5. But alright, let's knock it on the head. Tell me what you think about the album. If you've heard it, tell me how you feel in the comments. And while you're messing about with clicks and taps and stuff in that old region of the screen, press the subscribe button. I'm sure it's kicking about down there somewhere. Subscribe, share some thoughts, show some love, or just have some abuse in those comments, and there will be some recommendations of other videos you might like somewhere below this floating head. So yeah, check those out, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers, mate. Bye.